Morning. Let's continue our musical gathering to worship by turning to number 80, We Sing to You, O God. Number 80. And let's stand to sing.
All right. Welcome to everyone here today and those who may be watching now or in the future at some point. Have you ever experienced the literal bird's eye view of your current life? This could be done by going in a hot air balloon in your area, getting someone with a drone to take some pictures of your home from the sky, or in my case, from time to time when I climb one of the silos on our farm, 80 feet high. Every time I climb to this height, I always look around and always see something different that I couldn't from the ground. Oh, I missed that spot in the field, or oh, I wonder what's going on in that farm. It never fails to remind me that a change in my perspective can change how I view something day in and day out. Today, as part of our series on mountains in the Bible, we talk about Mount Nebo. This is a significant location in the Bible where Moses is informed that he will see the promised land from the top of the Mount Nebo, but will die on Mount Nebo, since he was forbidden to enter the promised land with his people, the Israelites. Let us pray. Lord, open our eyes and ears to your word and message for us. Meet us everywhere, from the mountaintops to the valleys in our lives. We are amazed by your creation and view your mountains as the magnitude of your power. Amen.
Let's sing Lead On, O Cloud of Presence, 194. This hymn is a paraphrase of Lead On, O King Eternal. The author has taken the militaristic language of the triumphal military language and changed it to a language of liberation. She said, this is a trek to freedom. Let's stand to sing.
On that same day the Lord told Moses, "Go up into the Abiram range to Mount Nebo in Moab, across from Jericho, and view Canaan, the land I am giving the Israelites as their own possession. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the desert of Zin, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. Therefore you will see the land only from a distance. You will not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel."
Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zor. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, 'I will give it to your descendants.' I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross over into it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor. But to this day, no one knows where the grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days, until the time of weeping and mourning was over. Good morning. So what is the highest point you have ever climbed to? Like a tree or something high on the house? Can anybody think how high you've actually climbed? Yeah? On a mountain, yeah. And so was the view a lot different up there than from down here? Yeah. Yeah, that's what we do when we want to see a long ways. We go to a higher spot. And that's what happened. God told Moses to climb up onto Mount Nebo to view the promised land, because you can't see very far from when you're on the ground. And that's what you'll see here. We got a few pictures. How your perspective can change when you just change from where you're looking. So that red mark there that's where the mountain is. And then you could see quite a long ways from that mountain. It was pretty central, and you could see over the river to where, my paper here, I'm new to this, to where they were going to cross over the river. So that's a view of Mount Nebo today. Oh boy, that didn't work. Maybe you should run it. Go back to the mountain. If you can. Yeah, there. So it's kind of like right now, you can flip one page. So on our farm right now, for about 3 months a year, the corn is really high, and we can't really see too far past the buildings. So you can flip one more page. As you can see, we're just kind of crowded in by the crop, and you're just working all the time, not looking too far. And you can go one more slide. And then every now and then I have to go up in the silo, and I like to look around. Like I can look down the road and see the traffic coming from a long ways. You can go one more slide. And here I can look out into the fields and see things. You can see there's tractor marks in the field there from going through the field. You can go one more slide. You can look over the farmstead. And Now I have a little bit of a Where's Waldo. I want to see if you can find Isaac in this picture. So you guys are a bit closer. Can you try and find Isaac? He's really small, actually. Anybody see him? He's actually closer to the middle of the picture. It's pretty small. I'll kind of show you. He's right there. So, yeah, it's helpful to climb a mountain to see in higher places to see a different perspective, but then actually, you start missing out on some of the little details, like a little person there, and you can go one more slide. And then again, Isaac's there. But then, I can look in the field to see, well, I ran out of seed, like this is one variety of corn, so it's a lot taller than this. I wouldn't have known that from standing along this side of the field, but I can see, oh, that's different in there. And then here we have some test plots, so we try different varieties from time to time. So, yeah, just when you go up in a higher spot, you can see a lot differently, and it changes your mind on how things are. And this is just kind of a present-day example of that, and that's what God was doing with Moses. He wasn't going to allow him to go into the Promised Land, but at least he gave him a view of it, and what do? You go up to a mountain. And so that's one of the neat things about mountains, is how you can change your perspective on, because most people usually lived and worked in the valleys back then too. So, yeah, I think that's it for slides. No more? Yeah, that's it. So I'll keep that in mind today while we're talking about Mount Nebo. All right, you can go back.
Wake you up. Good morning. Thank you for having me here today, and I'm happy to be here to worship with you. And thank you, Mark, for inviting me to share about the mountain. As many of you know, that the Laotian Civil War was waged between the Communist Pathet Lao and Royal Lao government from May 23, 1959 to December 2nd in 1975. The Kingdom of Lao was converted theater during the Vietnam War, with both sides receiving a heavy external support in proxy war between the global Cold War superpower. During this time, this left many people that are scrambling for refuge in North America, in Europe, and all around the world. On October 1975, there was 3 villages, approximately about 700 people, decided to leave everything behind that went straight forward to Thailand. More than 700 people, include my family. I had to travel 6 days and 7 nights to Thailand by foot. At that time, in 1975, my brother worked as a spy in Thailand, and he went to Thailand about a week or two before we take off to Thailand, and he came back and took all of us there. And during the travel, we had to be as quiet as possible to the day and night, and it wasn't easy for the group that big. We had our own shower, the group to protect us, and most of our family had guns, had everything to protect us on the way. They were ready for anything that's happened on the road, on their travel. We travel a valley to valley, a river after river, mountain after mountain. We crossed so many mountains during our travel. There was one mountain we call the 2 hours mountain. I don't know what they call that mountain, but we call 2 hours mountain on that journey. And it's just only 20 minutes away from Thailand border. And that's a mountain brought fear, hope, and freedom to our family and to the others. We fear that how we could get the water because it's too hot and dry on that mountain. And we fear that we were going to too slow and might get caught by the Communist army. And we fear that our many seniors would not make it. We fear that we will not make it to Thailand at that point because we traveled about 3 nights and 4 days already to get to that border, and tired, exhausted, and less of food. We depend on the nature and things like that. And we fear that we might not make it to Thailand. We even fear that wild animal will come after us because this mountain is so many of them. There was a lot of wild elephant at that point and in that area. So on the other hand, we hope that if we pass this mountain, we would make to the border. We hope that we would cross the border without conflicts or seeing communist soldiers. We hope that we were not going to battle with the communist soldier or army that if we see them. To our mind, and what came through our mind were the freedom that we saw and our destiny that not too far away. At the border, we have a shore stay across the road to protect us unless people go by. When we crossed the border, we had to go fast as we could so that we were not caught by communist soldier. And at this mountain, we see that it's a lot of people that been tired, hungry, and there's many of them. At least I understand that there were 7 of them that are pregnant, and they're about to deliver too. And at the crossroad, we have a lot of shoyer, like most of the family, they have our own shoyer that like the village shoyer kind of thing. They have gun, they have everything to protect for us to cross the road. So it's 700 people. It's not easy to cross that road. And with all the senior and the pregnant women and things like that, and we hope that when we cross the border, we will see our freedom and our life over there in Thailand. So when we make to Thailand, we will be welcomed by the smiling of Thai army and Thai soldier and mayor of the village that will welcome us. And after that, they send us to the camp. On this journey, even though way back then nobody knew God, so on this journey we know that God is with us all along the way that we make to Thailand. And after that, we settled out in Thailand. As many of us went back too. Again, go get the whatever left behind. We got to do it again. Our young people go to the experience in Thailand. Go to tell the people back at left behind, and a lot of things left behind that bring them back. And we always tell them to prepare that there's a mountain that we have to climb. That's this big mountain, and we have to. And second time they came back, they come, so they have a lot of things to prepare and to go on to face that mountain. And it's the same thing that when we pass this mountain, we can see. I hope it will make life better in Thailand, and we can see our life that start there. So even though we become a refugee, and we're not the same as Thai people, but we were welcome. They will welcome us as their people in Thailand. So on this journey, we give thanks to God that He's always there for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing your miraculous journey. You're both a blessing and it's a miracle that you're here with us. Let's respond by singing number 11, Mountain of God. Let's stand to sing.
Most of us, if not all of us, will someday need to use glasses. Sunglasses, reading glasses, bifocals, trifocals. Some will need to use a magnifying glass to see the fine print on a medication bottle or the ingredients on a food package. And many of us have had the chance in science class to look through a microscope magnified by the power of 4 or 10 or 100 or more to see what's in a drop of water or a piece of a leaf or a cell. And some will even have the chance to look through a telescope with an aperture of 80 millimeters or something like that to see dozens of galaxies beyond our own Milky Way. The size and shape of the lenses we use matter. Many of us have sat in the optometrist's chair looking through those large frames covering one eye while the optometrist changes the lens one at a time for one eye at a time. Clearer now or now? This lens, clearer, less clear? Until we finally settle on the one that brings the letters on the wall at the far end of the room into clear focus, and we get a prescription for that size and shape of lens to fit a pair of glasses. Today's biblical story of Moses on Mount Nebo has something to do with sight, with a view and a vision, a panoramic perspective, and with a lens or a set of lenses that affected what Moses saw, and just to layer on a little more depth and perspective, whatever lens we approach this story with will affect what we see too. So clean your glasses if you have them, grab a magnifying glass, maybe a telescope, and let's head back to the land of the Bible, to Mount Nebo. The view from up here is amazing. It's a clear day, and you can see for kilometers in all directions, both sides of the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea to the south, the city of Jericho, and further away, Bethlehem and even Jerusalem, all part of the land that God promised to Abraham and Sarah and their descendants on down through the family line. This is the promised land. Beautiful hill country and fertile valleys extending all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, a land with such potential and promise to sustain its people. This Mount Nebo story, as Ryan has already alluded to, represents a watershed moment, a key turning point in the story of Moses and the Israelite people. Moses' work is done. After 40 years of wandering in the wilderness as aliens and refugees, Moses and his fellow Israelites are on the cusp of a new life, full of possibilities and potential. This is mission accomplished for Moses. He led these cantankerous, fickle people from slavery in Egypt to freedom. So let's allow Moses some sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, dare I even say pride. Forevermore, this will be his legacy, a leader, a prophet like no other, unequaled for all the signs and wonders God sent him to perform in the land of Egypt, and for all the mighty deeds and all the terrifying displays of power that he performed in the sight of all Israel, as it's written in Exodus. And one who was known to have a face-to-face relationship with God. So here on the top of Mount Nebo, we find Moses, still strong and robust for his age. He climbed up here, after all. And there's an air of hopefulness about him and anticipation here on the edge of the Promised Land, at the cusp of a new life for his people. But with Moses, there are signs of aging, too. Gray hairs, wrinkles, stress lines on his forehead. It was not an easy journey for him these last 40 years. Not easy to be the one they all looked to for guidance, the one they all came to with their complaints and their fears. There is an air of sadness to him as well, for he will not get into the Promised Land himself. This is the end of the path for him. Are those tears we see sliding down his face? I've always felt that this was more than a little unfair for Moses. After all he did for his people, for God to deny him entry into the Promised Land feels a little harsh. In this text, the reason given is that Moses and his brother Aaron lost their tempers, disobeyed God in front of the people at Meribah when the people cried out for water in the desert, and Moses cried out to God for help. God gave Moses instructions to speak to the rock, and water would come out of it. But Moses, angry and frustrated with the people, raised his staff and struck the rock twice, and water poured out, enough for the people and their livestock. This act of dishonoring God's holy presence, of ignoring God's instructions, means that Moses will only get to see the land from a distance, but not enter it. Really? That's all it took? It all hinges on that one time when Moses lost his temper. But elsewhere in Deuteronomy, different reasons are given to explain why Moses can't enter the promised land. In one place, it's because the whole generation that left Egypt rebelled against God, and so none of them, Moses included, would enter the promised land. They would all die before they got there. In another text, it's because God was angry with the people for making an idol to worship, and Moses, as their leader, suffers the consequences for their disobedience. And even when Moses begged, God said no. Perhaps the biblical writers themselves can't make sense of why Moses wasn't allowed to enter the promised land, and they're really grasping for explanations, and that's why there's several different reasons given, none of which quite feel adequate. But whatever the reason that leaves Moses to die on the outside looking in, we find ourselves in this story on top of Mount Nebo with him. So let's pause here on the cusp at the turning point and take a look around. What do we see? Well, it depends on what lenses we're looking through. If we look back, way back, 40 years back, we can see all the way back to the time of slavery. We see harsh conditions, punishing laws, oppression, and suffering at the hands of the Egyptian Empire. A people wretched and forgotten. But change the lens, and now we see a different story. Now we see a God who remembers them, a God who acts on their behalf, a God who keeps promise with the people. We see an identity-shaping, life-defining Exodus story of triumph and deliverance as the people, under dramatic circumstances, walk out of Egypt to freedom, and the Egyptians suffer devastating losses. The lens we look through matters. Look back again, and now we see the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. They're lost and afraid, helpless and exposed. They're displaced, homeless, refugees longing for a place to belong, to call home. The desert around them feels dry, empty, and barren. Their resources are scarce, their patience is wearing thin. If they can't find food and water, they will just die out here. Their future feels uncertain and precarious. They're really just coping and surviving. Slavery back in Egypt is starting to feel appealing. And faith is not easy out here. Every promise God made to their ancestors seems void. The people rebel, anger and unrest boils over easily, and Moses bears the brunt of their frustrations. But change the lens, and we see a different kind of wilderness story. We see a God who sustains and provides water from the rock, manna every day. A God who is present, who leads and guides with a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire by night. A God who calls and shapes a people, who offers a set of law and commandments to form them into a community of caring and compassion. And slowly and haltingly, they begin to develop an identity, a character as the people of God. A time of testing, to be sure, but also a time of learning and growth. We see a story of growing trust, a track record of God's faithfulness. The lens we look through matters. And now, what if we shift our view and look in a different direction, no longer back to where the Israelites have come from, but forward toward the Promised Land. We see the Jordan River, that symbolic boundary that divides wilderness from the land, that ribbon of water that they will cross over into a transformed life with a whole new identity. Looking over the river, we see a place they can call home, a place to settle, to find safety and security. This is an attractive and bounteous land, especially coming out of the desert east of the Jordan. And we can imagine the houses, the towns and cities, the wells and cisterns, the vineyards, groves of olive trees, flocks of sheep and goats, all the means to sustain life. A land, as it is often described, as a fertile and spacious land flowing with milk and honey. Here, these people can take root, settle in, develop an identity, and finally experience their freedom fully. Covenant fulfilled, God is faithful, God is on their side, and they have a freedom story to tell. But what if we change the lens once again? Can we, with Moses, now see from a different perspective? Can we see into this future utopia, this promised land flowing with milk and honey? Can we see that there are already people who live in this land? The Canaanites, they have towns and cities, wells and cisterns, vineyards and olive groves. They know this land to be their home, their security, their future hope. Can we see the battles to come over this land, starting with Jericho, a city we can see from here on top of the mountain? Can we see the destruction, the bloodshed, the animosity, the mistrust that is to come for generations and up to this very hour? When we change the lens, the freedom story becomes a conquest story, a story with a shadow side. The story of refugees in search of a place to call home becomes a story of invasion and takeover and occupation. And the current politics of this land reverberate with this clash of stories, experiences, and memories. And here I thought our summer series would be easy, inspiring mountaintop stories. I guess I had my naive lenses on. When we change the lens, the freedom story becomes a cautionary tale. Maybe we can't quite see it yet from up here on Mount Nebo, but the promised land comes with a serving of risk alongside the abundant milk and honey. The land is both fraught with problems and loaded with promise, says Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann. Yes, the land is pure gift, pure grace from God, unearned, no achievement or merit on their part to deserve this. The land is the tangible, real embodiment of God's generation-long promise fulfilled. But so quickly, the Israelite people, and let's not kid ourselves, we would do the same, will take this good gift and its abundant resources for granted. They will soon forget how it was that God led them out of slavery through the wilderness to this land. They will come to see it as their strength, their might, their abilities, their smarts that got them the land, and it's now theirs to enjoy, to rule, to exploit, to manage, to control. They will begin to covet what their neighbors have, their goods, their kings, and their gods. The land will become a temptation for them as their kings become the ones with wealth and power, and they will become self-seeking, the ones who coerce and oppress and use the force of an army to get what they want. They will pervert and distort and destroy, and they will forget their history of slavery, barrenness, hunger, and manna. Guaranteed security has a way of dulling the memory, says Walter Brueggemann. The book of Deuteronomy is basically this cautionary tale. It's Moses' speech in several parts to the next generation of Israelite people about to enter the promised land. He cautions them against the temptations of the land. He warns them not to forget who they are, where they have come from, and who brought them here. He pleads with them to remember the God who saved them from slavery and provided for them in the wilderness, to remember that the land is an unearned gift. He pleads with them to keep the law and the commandments, the good ways given by God to guide their life together as they form community in the land. He begs them to remember what it was like when they were weak and vulnerable, so that they have compassion on the widows, the orphans, the strangers among them. Access to the land will define the shape and character of the Israelites and the shape and character of their story. And Moses challenges this generation to be different from their parents who resisted and rebelled against God. This is an ancient story, but we can relate to it in so many parts of it. And Psalm, your story, just reminds us again of how much this is part of our story in so many ways too. Many of us know what it is like to feel lost and afraid on our life's journey, to wait a long time for a dream to be fulfilled, to feel regret over past mistakes and what could have been. And many of us can relate to someone who is old, looking back on what has been their life and legacy. And some of us know what it's like to struggle through hardship and how that story can turn into a story of security and prosperity. These are stories of the human condition, and we recognize other chapters of the same stories in our history. Some of us know what it is like to be refugees and flee from suffering. And here in Canada, we can certainly relate to the conquest story of settlers claiming land that was not empty. Perspective matters. The lens we look through impacts what we see. And one of the lenses that we are challenged to look through by people in the Black and Indigenous communities and people of color, they challenge us to look through with a lens of power perspective. Who has it? Who doesn't? How does power shift? We can get whiplash looking at all the power shifts in the land of the Bible over its history. From Moses' perspective up here on Mount Nebo, this 360-degree view, both remembering the past and looking to the future with hope and with caution, from this story and this perspective, I'm taking away three things. First of all, I'm encouraged to keep changing my lens and keep looking from different perspectives and different angles. Up here on Mount Nebo, I need to keep turning around to get a bigger picture, to look forward and backward, to reflect on how someone else might see things differently. And perhaps even before that, it's important to simply recognize that I look with a particular set of lenses over my eyes. And can I even name what that lens is and how it came to be, that's the way I look at the world? What lenses and perspectives have shaped us? And then can we take off that lens and look through someone else's lens? The picture we see inevitably becomes more nuanced, richer, and more complicated when we look through another lens. Second, up here on Mount Nebo, I'm encouraged to know my own story. What kinds of experiences are in my family history? Who are my people? Where did they come from? When did they move and why? And what was their relationship to the land where they lived and the people who shared the land with them? And how was God present in their journeys? Looking back at my own story calls for equal measures of gratitude and humility. In their book called Healing Haunted Histories, A Settler Discipleship of Decolonization, Ched Myers and Elaine Enns encourage us to analyze the place, the people, and the story, and the plot, the place, people, and spirit of our storylines, or if you will, the setting, characters, and plot of our storylines. And they call these landlines, the story of the geography where our people lived, bloodlines, the families and communities our people were part of, and song lines, the traditions, the practices, the routines, and the rituals that were part of our family history. Knowing our own stories can help open us up to the stories of others and motivate us to be part of understanding and healing the divisions and the polarizations in our culture today. Third, from up here on Mount Nebo, I'm challenged to learn to know the story of the other. Lisa Shirk, a professor of peace studies at Notre Dame, in a recent Anabaptist World article, challenges Mennonites to a broader perspective on the Israeli and Palestinian story. She says that Mennonite tendencies to widely support compassion for Palestinians and focus on Palestinian trauma and safety, which is all good, often means that Mennonites are mostly silent about Jewish trauma and safety, and even in danger of denying Jewish history and ties to the land. From her work and study and travel in Israel and Palestine, she shows how Palestinians and Jews have two very different narratives. Both claim to be indigenous to the region with historic and religious ties to the land. And in the article, she has a chart with both narratives side by side, and it's significant to see how different they are. Just one example from that chart. Many Palestinians see Israelis as colonizers and occupiers who have taken their homes and their land, and that the solution is to decolonize Israel and make one land where there's equal rights for all. And I was at a seminar with a speaker that covered that topic just a few weeks ago. Many Israelis see themselves as refugees, fleeing the horrors of the Holocaust, searching desperately for safety and security. They had nowhere else to go, as most countries blocked Jewish migration at that time. Both stories are true. And Shirk says that compassion only for Palestinians or only for Israelis undermines progress towards a just peace. And placing all the blame on one party when both bear responsibility increases conflict and division instead of promoting peace, she writes. Both Palestinians and Israelis have deep intergenerational trauma from direct acts of violence. And she says a just peace depends on all sides being seen. And she adds, listening and helping people feel heard is the central work of peace building. So that's why I chose Beauty for Brokenness as our song of response this morning. From up here on Mount Nebo with Moses, we can see that the land has more than one story. It is a story of beauty and a story of brokenness. It's a story of freedom, joy, delight, abundance, safety, and security. And it is a story of suffering, loss, conflict, bloodshed, and sorrow. All those experiences are true. Perhaps God was really protecting Moses by keeping him from entering the promised land. Perhaps God didn't want Moses to fully experience how the story would unfold. Throughout their history, the Israelites have experienced it both ways. So have the Canaanites or Palestinians. And the land of Israel and Palestine, the land of the Bible, which would basically fit into the size of Lake Ontario, though it has probably had an oversized impact on our world throughout its history, is really a microcosm of our bigger world and its beautiful and broken stories in so many places. So perhaps this song can remind us to change our lenses, to analyze our own stories, and to try and see deeper into the stories of others. So can we sing this as a prayer for our beautiful and broken world?
Let's turn to number 712, Beauty for Brokenness, and stand to sing.
Morning. To start our announcement time, I invite Ryan Martin to come forward to talk about this afternoon.
So last number of years, we've had a hot dog campfire roast in the middle of July, and that's today by the Mill Race Dam. People can either walk there from here or drive. If you're driving, maybe try to carpool a little bit because parking's a little bit tight there. If you're walking, follow Mark. It's about a dangerous thing. He thinks he knows where you're going. I think was about a 1 kilometer roughly, so it's not crazy. It's pretty flat. So, and if you have lawn chairs, you can either throw them in our truck. It will be it's the red truck outside the church. We'll be leaving right after church to go there and get the fire started, or find somebody else and throw it in their car, so you don't have to carry your lawn chair the whole way. And yeah, just come out and enjoy the afternoon by the Mill Race Dam.
And I'll be just sort of outside here. We'll start walking from out here and then head towards the mill race and go through the mill race to get there. And don't worry if you haven't brought food, you're still welcome to come. There's lots of hot dogs. A few of us have some veggies and desserts to add to that. So anyone is welcome. I don't think there are any other announcements, but as the ushers get ready to come forward with the morning's offering, let us offer a word of thanks for all the gifts that come from God, the gifts that are shared with each other and with the world. So let's pray together. Thanks be to God. We want to take some time this morning to share with each other as a community. Ryan will come around with the mic and invite you to raise your hand if you have something to share, and then to introduce yourself. Yes, right at the back.
I go up there?
No, it's
Stay
fine.
here? Good morning, everybody. This is my first time at the church, and I just wanted to say to you that you're looking at a miracle that God has granted to me. I had 2 weeks to live. I had stage 4 uterine cancer. I was 62 pounds. I had 10 rides with the 911 call. I had 35 radiation treatments. My bowels are now fried for life, so when I eat, I have to be near a bathroom all the time. I had a hysterectomy that took the cancer out of me. It took them 62 staples to heal me and close me up again. And I also had 19 blood transfusions. And I stand before you today fully healed by the grace of God. So I am here because I've heard so much about this wonderful town, St. Jacobs. It's my first time at a bed and breakfast. I haven't been anywhere since I was sick. I have enjoyed myself immensely. I have so much to be grateful for. And I just wanted to come in and tell you that if people today don't think that miracles happen, I'm living proof that they do. Thank you.
It is so wonderful to have you with us this morning and to witness to the miracles of God in your life. we give so much thanks for the healing, for, in a sense, climbing that mountain and having God with you and coming out on the other side of the mountain. And so I invite us in our congregation, we respond to our prayer concerns by either saying, "O Lord, hear our prayer," or "Thanks be to God." And I invite a thanks be to God for your story and your sharing. So let's pray together. Thanks be to God.
I have one for our family. Just prayers for our family. We're going to be going through a major transition. Many of you know Liz Weber, and we've been so blessed to have had her the last 2.5 years to help my brother with his kids since his wife died. Anyways, she's decided her time has come to move on, and she's done such an awesome job. And so, it's going to be a big adjustment. So keep us in your prayers and through that process.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ryan. We know Liz well from her time as interim pastor here and her involvement. She's pastor right now at First Mennonite and studying at Grable. She's had lots of stuff that she's balancing, but one has been that wonderful gift that she's been to your family the last 2.5 years. And we thank you for the relationship with the two kids, and know that they'll really miss that connection. And we continue to think about your brother, think about all of you as you remember a beloved mother and wife in that situation there. So we want to offer our prayers, maybe both prayers, a thanks be to God for Liz's presence in your kind of broader family life, and also for that transition. Oh Lord, hear our prayers. So let's pray together. Thanks be to God. O Lord, hear our prayers.
Lori Martin, I'll just take over because it might be easier for me to finish for Ryan. But so in that on that vein or whatever, but we're now looking for somebody. So if you think of anybody, just run it by us. We actually, with Liz's help, have made a job description, and it comes with an apartment. So you live out on the farm. There's an apartment in the home. It's your own space. It's room for, there's only one bedroom and stuff, but we're looking for somebody, obviously, that can help in the mornings when Phil goes to the barn. So 5 mornings a week, 5:30 to 7:30 in the mornings. And then what Liz was doing was 3 nights a week usually to help get the kids off the bus. And anyways, it can change probably a little bit, but just if you have anybody in mind, we have a job description, and recommendations are always awesome.
All right, thanks for filling that a little bit. Sharing over there, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Kane. This is my cousin Neil. He's visiting from BC. So he's going back tomorrow, so prayers for a good trip, and we're thankful that he got to come visit us. His caregiver was visiting her family in Brampton, and so he went on the plane with her, and we picked him up from the airport on Wednesday, and we're taking him back tomorrow. So it's been a good visit so far, and he wanted me to introduce everybody to him. So here he is. You want to wave, Neil? Okay. He's a little shy.
Neil, it's wonderful to have you here. It's good to have those kind of connections and to have cousins connections across the country that when you reconnect, it's wonderful. And so for those kind of connections for you and for many people as we go through the summer, the kind of connections with people we maybe don't see as often, let's offer a thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. I have a few things to share. First of all, Psalm and wife Keo, it's great to have you here with us this morning. I have 3 of your grandchildren here with us. You are such friends through our connections with Grace Lau. We had the church picnic together in June, and that's when I was going around listening to different circles. And 3 or 4 different circles, people were talking about needing to climb mountains to escape from Laos to Thailand. And I heard a bit of Psalm story there, but a few other circles as well, and thought we needed to hear that story and be reminded of that history, which is part of a number of stories, but part of your story. So thanks for coming this morning, for sharing that with us. That 2-hour mountain must have felt like a mountain of God to be able to come through on the other side of that. I also think about those wonderful connections that come out of that in terms of that sponsorship and Grace Lau growing out of that almost 50-year history that we've had together, and the blessing of that. Just to note that next Sunday I will be preaching at Grace Lau, have been invited, and we do that support back and forth. So I'm looking forward to being with you next Sunday. And so for those connections, for that story, for your sharing this morning, let's offer a thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. I got a call this morning from Heather Weber letting us know that Dave's father, Aidan Weber, had a heart attack on Thursday. He lives at the Meadows. Some of you know him through those connections. They attend Calvary United here in town. He's recovering at St. Mary's. Lot of uncertainty in terms of what that will mean for him going forward, what kind of recovery may or may not be possible in there. So we want to pray for him, pray for his wife Alita, and then pray for Dave and for Heather, for their broader families as they hold his dad. So let's offer our prayers together. O Lord, hear our prayers. And we want to continue to remember the congregation of Waterloo North Mennonite as they grieve the death of their pastor, Kendra Whitfield Ellis. We had shared about that last Sunday. We pray too for husband Peter, children Kayana and Ollie. Plans have now been put in place. Visitation for Kendra will be this Friday from 2 to 4 and 7 to 9 at Waterloo North Mennonite Church. And then the funeral is next Saturday, 1 p.m. at Floridale Mennonite Church. She had pastored both at Floridale earlier and then currently at Waterloo North. So those two communities are coming together in terms of supporting their family. And so for this very difficult time for all involved, we want to offer our prayers. O Lord, hear our prayers. I invite us now into a time of prayer. O God, open our eyes that we may see. We recognize that we only see in glimpses. Our perspectives can be so clouded. Help us to try on different lenses that may just give us new insight into how another views things. Help us recognize and name power and how that influences how we see. Give us clarity to see through your broader and expansive vision for the world. Silently now we wait for you. Ready, our God, your will to see. O God, open our ears that we may hear. There are so many voices in our world, so many ways to tell the story. Give us ears of compassion that can truly listen to the person in need, to the person who is suffering, to the situation that calls for a response, to someone else's perspective. Help us listen well, without judgment, without imposing our own view, simply to listen. Silently now we wait for you, ready, our God, your will to see. O God, open our mouth that we may speak, and speak gladly, gently, and graciously into our world. Help us to know our own story and understand both its joys and its challenges and shortcomings. For when we know and accept our story, we can enter into others with grace and compassion. When we speak, let us speak with humility and with openness, witnessing to your grace in our lives. Silently now we wait for you, ready, our God, your will to see. O God, open our hearts that we may love. May all our listening and speaking and seeing be rooted in your love for us and your love for this world, both broken and so beautiful. We are your beloved children, all of us, our whole world. Assure us that love Assure us of that love deep in our hearts and our very being. Let all we do emerge from that love. Silently now we wait for you, ready, our God, your will to see. Illumine us, Spirit divine. Amen.
Let's continue our prayer by singing our sending song, Open My Eyes That I May See, number 738. And let's stand.
As you go forth this week, consider the mountain view of your life. Amen.